If I asked you, what do you think the most common question is when it comes to purchasing property, I'm sure you would guess it's where do you start your offer? This is where so many buyers go wrong. Let's jump into a rule that I've spoken about many times before. That rule is what a property's quoted and what a property's worth are two completely separate things. It's really important to understand that because buyers think, oh, you should always start at the bottom of the range. You should always start at the top of the range. And they use the range as a reference point to where you should begin an offer. You cannot do that because if you quote a property 5 to 550, that's worth $1 million, and you'll go on the rule of thumb that you have to offer at the bottom of the range at 500, you're never going to buy the property. You're never going to get that offer across the line. Just as the opposite, if the property is worth $1 million and the quote is 1.5 to 1.6 and you go, have to offer at the top of the range because that's my rule of thumb, you offer 1.6, you can quite easily see how the range all of a sudden doesn't dictate where you should start your offer. And if that was the case, then vendors would just inflate their range massively, which of course isn't going to always be the case, as in terms of course, if you saw something massively inflated, you wouldn't make that offer. But for some reason, when it comes to other properties, we fall into this trap of thinking where a property is quoted means I have to base where I start my offer off on that. First step when it comes to making an offer is actually understanding what the property is worth. So going and valuing that property, so going and looking at sold properties. Sold properties is evidence in the marketplace that things are selling for certain prices and what your property you would like to buy is worth. Don't fall into the trap of emotionally valuing a property where you put your rose-colored glasses on and you know there's a bunch of properties that have sold for $1 million that are similar, but you like to look at the properties that suit your agenda. So you're looking at properties that are $950 and you're telling yourself, oh, if we bought it for $950, you have to get real. When it comes to valuing property, you have to go, no, this is what I think it's worth. I actually genuinely think it's worth $1 million, maybe high nines. And you have to understand, there's not one singular number you can ever put on a property. Every property is different. There's different buyers for different properties and properties sell at different times. So it's impossible to say that the property is worth this exact number before it's sold. Obviously, once it's sold, it's worth that number. It's worth what someone's prepared to pay. But we're working out what that number could be. And before that number happens, there's most likely going to be a bit of a range. So if you think it's worth $975 to $1,025,000, probably not best if you're one-on-one negotiating, by the way. If you're one-on-one negotiating with the vendor, probably best to not start at $1,025,000 and probably best to not start at $1 million. Because the property, albeit could be worth $1,025,000 according to your valuation, it could also be worth $975,000, and you've created a gap. So when it comes to completely different, we've done other tips on how to work this out from here to get this deal closed, to get the smallest gap possible from where you start to where you end, or what you think it's worth, or trying to buy it for less than it's worth. We've done videos on that, but that will give you an indication of where to start your offer.